Eers and Beers, episode 49. What's on tap? A little Texas reaction. Feels like Groundhog Day. Another transfer casualty. Also feels like Groundhog Day. But first, as always, I'm Wesley Euler. He's Adam Crowley. This is Eers and Beers, the podcast. Mr. Crowley, what are we drinking? Good morning.
Good morning. Coffee enema. It's worked. I feel chipper on this fine Sunday morning.
You say coffee enema?
Yeah.
What's it? English? Layman's terms? What's that mean?
I drank a coffee, made me poop. I feel great. Despite another West Virginia basketball loss that looked like every other West Virginia basketball loss this year, I feel tremendous today.
It is probably a poop that looked like every single other poop you've taken this year. These things work in conjunction. Yeah, it's early Sunday morning again. Crowley and I doing our new early Sunday podcast slot here. I love this. I'm drinking a little coffee as well, although I tell you what, I did just absolutely crush some Hop Farm beers last night. If I look a little hung over in the eyes here on YouTube. But Crowley, let's get into it, man, because there is a lot. You know, I say that a lot on the podcast. Let's get into it just as a lazy transition. But there is actually plenty that I want to discuss with you here. You want to start basketball game last night and then some football stuff? Does that seem like the right timeline order to you?
Sure. And guess what? They did that thing again. Where they
ending again.
Yeah, they had it and then they didn't. And that's what's so frustrating, because you find a way to win 3 of these. If you especially look at this Texas game as a quad 1 victory. If you look at Texas Tech at home, if you have Taz Sherman, you win. And you've got Baylor on the road, another quad 1 victory. If you have Taz Sherman the last couple of minutes, I'm just going to say you win because I'm a West Virginia guy. That's 3 wins right there, 3 quad 1 wins, and West Virginia no longer then in the basement of the Big 12. You've got 3 quality wins, and you've got a chance to be in the NCAA tournament, and it just hasn't happened. And that means you're not very good. I mean, when you're 3-12 in the conference, we can talk about these ifs, ands, buts. Yeah. We can talk about these close losses, but, you know, you're just not very good, and it's a shame. And there's not much for me to analyze apart from that. Now, you were there. And you were probably inebriated, but I want to hear your firsthand experience of how that thing wound up.
You know what though? Like, you just touched on it. This team is not good. Okay. Mountaineer Nation is a lot of things. Overly passionate at a lot of times, very high on that list. And I'm right there with you. And we'll maybe get into some of that fire here in a couple minutes when we talk about another transfer casualty. But this team is not good. You are correct. But, Adam, they're not bad enough that they should be losing 13 out of 14 games either.
No.
And that's what makes this all so frustrating, is that, yes, this team is not good. They're not great. They have their issues. But they shouldn't look like Iowa State from last year at times, right? They shouldn't be finishing the season with a losing record that, you know, for all intents and purposes now, you're going to do unless you find a way to... Well, you would have to win 2 of these. You'd have to win 2 of your last 3 games if you include the tournament game to finish 500. They're not that bad either, and it's Groundhog Day in the way that they lose. Like every single one of these back-breaking, gut-wrenching losses, you can point to things that they did well, and I think that's what makes it so. Like I was looking at this, like actually just kind of looking at the stats before you and I went on air today. Yeah, you could tell we're actually OG radio guys doing this before we recorded today. You shot 50% from the field, and you took 9 more shots than the other team. When you shoot that well, and you put up 9 more attempts than the other team, you should win. But guess what? They shot 63%.
I know.
I mean, you did pretty well at the free throw line. They turned the ball over twice as much as you did. Like, all these things, you shot 50% from behind the arc. Still doesn't matter though, and that again, that's a team that should find some ways to win some games. But I think now too, they've just got the yips in that regard, right? Like when it's a close game, when it's down the stretch, it's that whole oh no, here we go again, and everyone is kind of looking around at everybody. Who's going to make the play? Who's going to seize the moment? How are we going to win this? As opposed to, you know how that works the other way too. When you're the team that always feels like you're going to pull it out, they're the team now that in the back of their minds always thinks they're going to lose. And I think we've seen that manifest over the last couple weeks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I don't know that they have a true leader, right? And God, that's such an intangible thing to discuss from a guy sitting in his closet.
Right, from
in
guys who
Pittsburgh.
aren't around the program, yeah.
But you need to have a guy on the court that has confidence no matter the circumstance. And maybe they had those guys early and they've just wilted given all the losses. But, maybe there's chicken in the egg there. But, with Javon Carter, you had a stopper, right? I mean, you're not going to, I think they lost 4 games in a row at one point, Javon Carter's last year. And then they said, enough of that. Right. And Taz Sherman's a great player. I don't think he's that guy.
Right.
It's like the Penguins yesterday. They hadn't been playing good hockey, and Tristan Jarry, he makes a bunch of saves. He doesn't stand on his head, but he plays really well. He's a stopper. It's like an ace starting pitcher. You need that guy who says, F it, I want the ball. Let's go. And look, Malik Curry played a good game yesterday. Old Dominion. I mean, you're not that guy. Yeah, he's not that guy.
I can't believe that. Can't believe that shot didn't fall at the end. Like,
I don't want to talk about it.
Can we get some Coliseum rim luck, please?
I mean, for F's sake, right?
How does that not fall? Like, how does that not fall?
That's just ridiculous.
Like 70-80% of the time that shot falls.
Yes. Not there.
You know what, though? A lot of what you were saying there, I think it's back to a stopper, right? And you correct me if I'm wrong. I think you mean someone to, like, stop the bleeding, right? And turn the tide in the other direction. Or did you literally mean like a defensive stopper? Because they could use this team, man, a smidge, just a pinch of defense would go a long way. Texas shot 63% from the field. Like, don't get me wrong, some of those they eyeballed. They were knocking down shots, but this team, man, they're I think the worst Bob Huggins defensive team that we've seen in Morgantown, and that goes a long way too.
I think that the Jordan McCabe freshman year team was worse. And
okay. All right, fair point.
I'm only bringing that up to save some face for this year's club because I don't want to go down that path. That's the team that gave up 109 points at the CBI. So I'll say that team was worse. But this one's not good. I know that Ken Palm still has them as a quality defensive club. But listen, we're watching all these games. I mean, the points in the paint, things like that. It's nauseating. But I'm talking like Joe Mazzulla, right? He's going to slap the floor. He's going to get a steal.
He's going to have DeMarcus. He's going to have DeMarcus Cousins cursing him out.
Yeah, and he's going to make a left-handed layup when he gets punched in the face. Like that, I think you need leadership, and Huggs has talked about it. You need guys who are going to play hard. And listen, if Huggs isn't going to be going out and recruiting the Oscar Tshiebwes of the world, who had 18 rebounds and 30 points yesterday, by the way, in a loss.
Jeez.
If you're not going to go out and you're going to get those guys, if you're not even going to try for those guys because of what has happened when you've got those guys, then you do need to get your quintessential, these guys want to play for the university.
Some dogs.
Yes. And that needs to be the recipe moving forward. You just need to be, to borrow a hockey phrase, you need to be hard to play against. And that's what they've been for so long under Bob Huggins and this year's team, anything but.
And of course, too, like all of this, it's kind of a lot of different, the straws that break the camel's back, that old cliche. Is it fair to say that in pretty much any other league that this is a tournament team? That like it just so happens that our worst season in a long time coincides with the best Big 12 basketball season since we've joined the conference in the past decade? Or am I just seeking comfort in saying things like that?
I was with you for a while, but just losing 13 of 14 or whatever it's been. I mean, I have a hard time.
When you pull up the schedule now online or on your favorite phone app or whatever, and you just see that just laundry list of red L's, that hurts, man. That's painful.
Yeah, it ain't good. And it's not like the team was great in non-conference either. I mean, they found a way to win most of the games, but Arkansas has, I think, shown themselves to be a really good team, and they just beat Kentucky yesterday at home. It's a really tough place to play when that squad's going. But, you go on the road and you almost lose to UAB. You lose to a Marquette team. You struggle with Clemson, find a way to come back and win that game, and that's not a very good basketball team. They're not horrendous, but whatever. I don't know. Maybe. I was leaning that way. I'm not there anymore. But listen, I think if you're a West Virginia fan, and you are because you're listening to this podcast, what you got to say to yourself is, Look at what Iowa State did. Look at what West Virginia's done with Bob Huggins. When they don't make the tournament, they usually bounce back pretty strong.
Mm-hmm.
There are reasons.
And it's easier to do that now than ever before.
Yeah.
Look
if Bob Huggins,
at Texas. I mean, if you're willing, exactly.
Right.
But look at Texas Tech. They almost completely turned their roster over. They are a legitimate Final Four team. Kansas State, much better than last year. Huge roster turnover in the portal. Iowa State, who you just referenced, was one of the worst teams in college basketball last year. Not in the Big 12, in college basketball, like in Power 5 college hoops last year. And they're a tournament team, and they've got a chance to go on a run. Texas had a lot of turnover with Chris Beard coming in. You can retool this thing very quickly. You just have to be willing, and you have to go out and find the right guys.
You ready for something weird?
Oh, I'm always ready for the weird.
It was Fran on the broadcast yesterday.
About time, by the way.
Well, I mean, God, poor guy. I mean, they sent him to watch West Virginia basketball this year. I love Fran. It's cruel and unusual punishment to put Fran Fraschilla through that right now.
It's cruel and unusual punishment what we're doing to ourselves twice a week.
But how about this, man? He brought up that he thinks, and there are whispers, that there's some other coaches like Mike Krzyzewski that are saying to themselves, you know what, I want to get out. It's about time for me to say goodbye. And he's talked about the whispers of some other dudes who might want to retire, might want to step away. And he did so while broadcasting a West Virginia basketball game when you know that they meet with the coach prior to doing the game.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll have to look to see if anybody wrote that up or anything, but it made my ears perk up whenever you hear, oh, there could be some other coaches that are looking to retire, looking for a way to get out because they just don't love the way things are going. And he's calling a Bob Huggins game. Like, did Huggy whisper to him and say, you know what, I think I might be done sooner rather than later? Like, that's what that intimated to me. And I can't say that I'd be shocked.
No, I wouldn't. But I don't see Huggs going out like this.
I don't think he'd go out like this.
Because you know it does. It legitimately eats it. Like, he wants to win games. You know,
there were 14,000 people there yesterday.
Every coach wants to win games, all right? Like, I'm not breaking any news here. But he's one of us. He cares about the university. He played for the program. He lives a mile away from the Coliseum. I mean, like, he is West Virginia. He is Morgantown through and through. You're right. It's the worst season we've had in a long time, and there's 14,000 people there. It's a sellout. I think he wants to at least end in a year where, you know, we're ranked a little bit. Maybe we make a run in the Big 12 tournament. Maybe, you know, we're certainly in the NCAA tournament, win a game or two. Again, I'm with you. It wouldn't shock me, but I don't think he's going to go out like this. Too much pride there.
I'm with you on that. I just think I think if you had thought prior to the year, oh, I got 5 years left or 4 years left.
Maybe it's 2 now.
Yeah, I'd say shave 2 off. You know, I think he wants to get West Virginia back to being a true contender, a true competitive team.
Yeah.
Which he's had for the majority of his tenure here in West Virginia. He wants to cut down the nets. He wants to win a national championship. He wants to get to a Final Four. You know, we'll see. But he definitely wants to get them in the tournament, I'd say, before he hangs it up.
You know what? Like a week or two from now when the season's over, we should do I think we did this for football at the end. Like a state of the program episode. And we'll talk about Bob Huggins and all that a little bit more, because I would like to get into that more with you.
They're winning the Big 12 tournament, though, so don't worry.
No, I mean, how many times can someone from the program run to Twitter and post some kind of "we're not dead yet" or "you gotta
Huggins
have
said
heart"?
It yesterday too. Like, what do you
I
mean
love him.
We're not dead yet?
Love them, but buddy, we have a losing record right now. We're 14-15.
The only way you're not dead yet is if you win the conference tournament.
So I guess technically you're not dead. Hey, you ain't out until you're out.
Can you imagine if they go in as the 10 seed and win the Big 12 tournament?
It'd be one of my favorite moments in WVU sports history.
Yes. And the thing is, we're all going to watch game 1 of the tournament, knowing that there's now stakes again, because the stakes have disappeared, and now the stakes will be back.
The stakes will be back. If you win, your season's a
chance. Yeah, so why not?
You know what it's like? It's like the Pirates fans that, like, in August, the team technically isn't mathematically out because there's so many bleeping games, and
they're 6 games out. They still got a shot.
They could, or no, not even that. They're 19 games out, but they could go on a 20-game win streak, and the other team could go lose 20 straight. Like, that's what we sound like right now. Like these Pirates fans that are like, well, you know, you're still not mathematically out. These New York Jets fans who are sitting there at 3-10. Oh, well, you know, you're not mathematically.
We're still in this thing. Not dead yet. What do you got on on Chandler
Yeah.
Tomato, man. I mean, golly.
Okay.
This one I don't get.
That's the thing. You and
Like,
I,
wait.
we're nuanced guys. That's why we enjoy doing the podcast. That's why we enjoy having these conversations. And we're both passionate about these things. We are. But dude, this one, the timing of it, the on the back of him sending out a month ago in January a 4-paragraph post about how much he loves Mountaineer Nation and let's take these country roads one more time. Like, guys don't say that and post that and then leave and not show up for workouts and leave in the middle of spring ball. Like, it hurts even more after that run it back message. You and I have said this every time we discuss this, man. I want these guys to do what's best for them, what's best for their families. I will never knock a kid for that. That's, college football has been taking advantage of these kids for way too long. College athletics, the pendulum's starting to swing the other way. That's just the nature of the beast. But, and I also get too, you could argue that, Josh, like, he fulfilled his obligation.
Sure.
He 4 years scholarship player, last year, COVID year, gonna go play somewhere else. But, WVU this one hurts because you felt like the defense was loaded coming back, right? And that was going to be
seven for sure.
That was going to be what you leaned on this year. You already lost your leading wide receiver. Now you lose your leading tackler on the back of losing Darryl Porter Jr. You're the only Power 5 school that offered Josh. It felt like he was really here for the long haul. This just, man, like, it all reeks of tampering to me. It does. You and I discussed this a couple weeks ago. The portal, the good intentions of the portal was step 1, players unhappy. Step 2, player enters the portal. Step 3, coaches from other programs reach out to the player. That is in theory how this is supposed to work, but now it feels like step 1, coaches from other programs reach out to the player. Then step 2, player enters the portal. And just on the back of how things went down with Darryl Porter Jr., very similar in this regard. A lot of the guys on the team not seemingly thrilled with this on Twitter. A lot of guys, Nestor and Gamitter, posting stuff like, we're going to win with the guys that want to be here. It just all reeks of tampering to me, man. I'm fine with guys entering the portal when they're unhappy, when they want a better situation. But this, again, just screams to me another school with deeper pockets getting into one of our guys. Eers, which is as a diehard fan of this program, which, as you like to say, most of the people listening to this podcast probably are, that has to piss you off. And it's just another kind of stab in the back to once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer. It's frustrating. Like, there's nuance with each of these transfers in each of these situations. And this one is different than a lot of the other ones. This one just reeks to me.
I want to see where he winds up. I want to hear the explanation. And frankly, he doesn't owe that to anybody, but of course I want to hear that. I'm a fan of the institution. So I would like to know why and what's going on, because you're right. When it happens in mass, the way that it sort of has with West Virginia, you look at it as a pattern, but each of these guys, they've got their own reasons for wanting to leave. My solution, and they should name me the czar of the NCAA, and I would do it for $80K.
For $80K, there he is.
Amount of money. I mean, come on. I think
inflation, though, now I think you need $85K, $90K
supply line. I think I would make the rule, if your head coach leaves, you can transfer immediately and not have to sit out.
Yep.
If your position coach leaves, you can transfer and you don't have to sit out. Anything else?
If you're a freshman, if you're just completed your freshman year, I think you can do the same.
No.
1 year with the program clearly didn't work out. Wasn't what you thought it was.
No. They don't pay me $90K to just bow down to Wesley Euler's demands.
Yeah. He got that $10K raise, folks. I mean, he's.
So I'm out on that. No. If your position coach leaves, your head coach leaves, you can transfer.
And there should be a window too, a transfer window, European soccer style.
Yes, there should be a transfer window. And then in addition to that, I mean, you can apply to transfer, not sit out. And the NCAA can look at these things. Like, if you have a kid, right, and your girlfriend, wife, whatever,
fiance
leaves with the kid to move to, I don't know, East Kabum, you know what, and you're in Morgantown and you want to go live with your kid in East Kabum and you want to you know, why would I? No, I'm not.
Right.
Look,
right.
90K ain't making me a bad guy. I mean, geez, you can transfer and you cannot have to sit out. Like, do it on a case by case basis, right? But I think that largely the rule should be, unless your position coach or your head coach leaves, you got to sit out. Because while it's about the students, and it should be first and foremost about the students, there are a lot of people that spend their hard-earned money. Like, the institutions should come last, right? But the fans right behind the student athletes should be number two, because they pay, they spend their income in these inflation times, Euler, to go watch guys that they care about.
I just renewed my season tickets.
Dork. I mean, what are you doing?
I am a dork. Listen, I'm going to be there every Saturday regardless. I love college football. I love WVU. It's my team. But you're absolutely, like, college football as a whole has attendance issues. The Athletic just wrote a great article. SEC had their lowest attendance in 30 years. ACC, lowest attendance in a couple decades. Pac-12, lowest attendance ever. That's only going to continue if the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. If you're not a fan of one of the select handful of programs that's going to benefit from this, how can you?
Those handful had good attendance. Like the cream of the crop all had good attendance this year.
Yeah, Alabama ain't struggling to sell tickets. Ohio State ain't struggling to sell tickets. But Iowa State might in a few years.
There's no middle class,
There's no middle class.
They're cutting out the middle class.
That's the thing. Like, don't get me wrong, especially in the scope of what's going on in the world right now. Like, I get that there's bigger problems, but if you're a diehard like us, if you're invested like us, certainly emotionally, and as you pointed out, financially as well too, people with season tickets, people who make donations. I'm not naive. I know the average WVU fan. I drive 80 minutes each way, so I drive a little, 2.5
uphill.
I drive about 2.5, 3 hours round trip every Saturday in the fall to Morgantown for football games. The majority of the fan base does that as well, too. This is one of the things that I like to mock Pitt about. Like, the average Pitt fan lives 20, 30 minutes away from their stadium and still can't be arsed to go to the game. The average WVU fan lives 2-3 hours away from the stadium and shows up every Saturday no matter what. Like, but I don't get how you can't be jaded by this. Especially, again, like you pointed out, every situation is different. But in the past week alone, you lose one starter to the portal, and Darryl Porter Jr., who had just tweeted about how he hated the portal. Was tweeting about hating the portal and how it was bad, and then he leaves. And then you have a guy who writes a 4-paragraph essay about how he's coming back, and he leaves. And again,
what that reminds me
I am
of?
all for kids doing what's best for them, but a lot of this stuff reeks, man. It just does.
I had a girlfriend in high school.
Oh no, here we go.
And so before I dated her, I did some of the physical stuff, right?
Little hanky-panky?
Oh, a little this, little that.
Second base? Double off the wall, double through the gap? The gap.
I mean, I'll tell you what, there was some gap action going on. And the girl that I started dating, we dated for like 9 months, and we didn't do anything because I was her first boyfriend. A little prude, whatever. Listen, fine, I'm not going to pressure you. We finally did stuff. And a week later, this probably doesn't speak well of me, she dumps me.
Oh, no.
It's over. And I'm thinking, this relationship's never gone better. She must feel great about me because we're doing this, that, and the other, right? And then it's done. That's what I felt like with Semedo here. He's like, I love you. Let's go to third base, baby. A little petting here, a little heavy petting. And then bang, all of a sudden it's over. It's done. Goodbye. See you later. And now you're off with somebody else. And now you're going to be doing third base stuff with them. That's what it felt like. It just completely came out of nowhere. Like, I would have been surprised if Stills left, obviously. But apart from that, like Semedo, the way that he put that love letter out there, he's the other guy that I would have been surprised about leaving, and he's gone. Maybe he comes back, but he's gone. He's not.
I don't think guys do. I don't think guys enter with NIL now. I don't think guys enter the portal to come back anymore.
Maybe he. Yeah, you're right. I tried. I couldn't even come up with one.
I mean, maybe Tyson Bagent at D2 Shepherd enters the portal and then comes back if he doesn't like what's out there. But again, I don't think it's this fairy tale in our head that we've concocted of, like I said, step 1, players disgruntled, so he enters the portal to see what's out there. Step 2, coaches reach out to him. Step 3, he makes a decision. It's step 1, Benedict Adai slides into your DMs.
Whoa!
Step 2,
How dare you?
Step 2, you get the bag and then you transfer to Miami or Florida State or somewhere in Florida that has all that hospital money.
Who's starting game 1?
Hold on. Couple more things for you here.
Oh,
Hold on.
geez.
All right, don't you rush me. Couple more things.
Jeez
I
Louise.
do like the frustration from the fan base is palpable, right? And I do think
It's palpable.
that's compounded by two things. I think it's fair to point out. One, this is the worst combined football and hoops season, calendar school year
Yes.
in a while. And the fan base is just cantankerous. Two, I mean, you mentioned this guy's name at the start of the episode. How dare you? Everyone sees how Oscar Shibboleh is just killing it right now. And I think, we got a little PTSD from that. Let me ask you this, though.
I'm ready.
Is it time to play dirty, too? Like, there's a lot of really good G5 football players out there. Is it time to go ransack some lesser schools? Is it time to, embrace it or get left behind? Because, I mean, it's the oldest cliche in the book. I know, Neal Brown is by all means a great dude who wants to build a culture the right way and all those things. He ain't Art Briles, okay? Let's put it that way. But I'm a little worried in this kind of new cutthroat college sports landscape. Like, nice guys finish last. Is it time to embrace this? Okay, if we're going to get plucked by Miami and Auburn and Georgia and Florida State, it's time for us to go ransack some G5, some lesser programs than us.
Yeah, and you don't even have to look at it as some sort of moral compromise, right? Where you're selling your soul. This is just the nature of the beast now. You don't even have to do anything illegal. You don't have to do anything that hasn't already happened to you. Just go freaking do it. You got 7 spots now that you can fill with transfers that they still need to fill. One of those, Neal Brown said he wants to be a kickoff specialist, and I do think that's valuable. F it. You got to go replace some dudes because you can compete this year with your front 7. You can compete with your whole offensive line coming back. You can compete if you plug some holes. I'm not saying win the Big 12, but can you win 8 games and beat Pitt? You're goddamn right.
Mm-hmm.
So get some guys. I don't care where you take them from. You get them. You go, you beat Pitt. You win 7 more games, and it's not a great season, but it's a really good season. And you know what? It is a great season.
Yeah.
So make it happen. Get your 7 dudes. Pluck them from wherever you got to pluck them. And beat Pitt with Nico Marchiol as your quarterback.
Adam Crowley, 2020.
Multiple things, though. Did you have one more
Adam
thing?
Crowley. Just one more, and then we got a DM question, and we'll get out of here, right. Okay? A lot of this from the fan base, too. And again, I understand it cantankerous, 2 rough transfers in a week. When you already lost your leading wide receiver from the last 2 years, surprisingly, a couple months ago. Fair to ask Neal Brown to address this stuff at this point. That's a thing that you see a lot of on Twitter. When's Neal Brown going to speak on all the transfers? Are we going to hear from Neal Brown about this stuff? Is that fair, or should he just, as the CEO, keep it moving and not try and I think for some people that would be seen as trying to put out a fire. Should he maybe just keep it moving and act like the fire isn't there? Where do you come down? Because I'm not naive enough to think. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have been wondering that too. Hey, can we hear from Neal Brown? Is that fair? Where do you come down on that?
I think if Neal Brown speaks, then he acknowledges that there's a problem. And I don't think you want to acknowledge that there's a problem. I think you got to keep a straight and narrow. And so I think the smartest thing that Neal Brown could do is go out and hire your offensive coordinator again. I mean, that's what you did the first time. Things are getting dicey.
Here's Graham Harrell.
Myself, Graham Harrell here. Bang. Do it again. Go hire Graham Harrell again, and then get fans off your butt. Because it wasn't all that long ago we were starting to feel good about things. But no, I would not acknowledge it if I were him. I think you just got to keep it moving, and you hope that you win some games and people don't care. You got to hope that there's not another mass exodus after spring or before fall. I mean, fingers crossed. That's what you're hoping for.
Just win some games. Winning cures everything. Just beat Pitt, and we'll all be happy as a clam.
Yes.
All right, Crowley. Second DM question to the Eers and Beers account in the history, the infantile history of this podcast. This one comes from Joshua.
What's up?
He says, can I throw in a question for the next episode? Yes, you can. With the state of the football and basketball programs in down years, do we feel that there should be any pressure on Shane Lyons? I think it's safe to assume Coach Brown's hand was forced a little this offseason with staff changes. Can we expect the same from the basketball staff? So there's, I guess, kind of 3 tiers to that. First, thoughts on Shane Lyons?
Basketball was a 3 seed last year. It's not that he didn't hire Bob Huggins, so I guess I can understand where the question's coming from. This is a bad year. I do know for a fact, and we've talked about this, that Shane Lyons sort of pushed upon Neal Brown that you need to make a change here.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why Graham Harrell is here. And it became a mutual understanding, but Shane Lyons desperately thought something needed to happen to make the offense off not offensive anymore to watch.
Yeah.
So I think Shane Lyons is probably the right guy. I like the Neal Brown hire, as did the fan base when it happened.
We loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of these things are, you can think it's a great hire at the time and it doesn't work out. I mean, it happens. Charlie Strong, it happens all.
Virginia Tech fans right now are drooling over that defensive coordinator that they just hired from Penn State.
Yep.
Maybe it worked. Maybe Pry. They're drooling over Pry. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't.
Yep. I mean, Lincoln Riley, I'm sure, is going to work out in Southern Cal, but if it doesn't,
that's another one. Oklahoma fans have convinced themselves that Venables is going to be better than. This is what we do. Is your program rarely makes a hire and you go, "Oh, that's a bad hire." No, you want to be optimistic. You talk yourself into it.
Yeah. So I'm not there. If Neal Brown, if they go, 3-9 or 4-8 or even 6-6, then I think that there's some serious questions. But no, as for the basketball staff, I don't think Bob Huggins is going to do anything. And,
you and I have talked about that before.
We have.
Larry Harrison, Frank Martin. It's Ron, right? Ron Everhart. Like those guys have been there for a long time.
You just put Frank Martin on the staff.
I did just put Frank Martin. Sorry, Eric Martin.
That'd be a hell of an ad.
That would be a hell of an ad. Maybe that's the guy. Let's swap Martins.
It took South Carolina to the Final Four. I don't think Shane Lyons has the same conversation with Huggins and says you need to shift up your staff. I just don't think that happens because he's Bob friggin' Huggins and because they were a 3 seed just last year. But the state of the program overall right now is not great. The rest of the sports are doing awesome, which is why Shane Lyons is going to get the boot. But those two money makers, you need them.
Even in the midst of a pandemic, they've managed to stay pretty viable from a MAC side, which is very important in all this conversation too. I'll say this about Shane Lyons. Listen, as an athletic director at 95% of universities in this country, you're judged on football. And you're judged on your football hires, and he hired Neal Brown. I think we have to wait one more year for that to really rain a final verdict down. I will say this, though, about Shane Lyons. If you separate the head coaches of the football, and again, like Crowley pointed out, he didn't hire Bob Huggins. If you separate the head coaches and some of the frustration there this season in the two biggest programs at the university, football and men's basketball, other than that, I think Shane Lyons, and I understand the frustration there, and I'm not even criticizing Shane for that, but he's hitting home runs everywhere else. From a facilities standpoint, from all the other sports, Shane Lyons is the guy that I think is a fantastic leader to have for WVU. And here's maybe the most important reason why, Adam. There's going to be, within this next decade, right? It's 2022 now. By the time we get to 2030, there's going to be major landscape shifts and changes again in the NCAA as it relates to conferences, all this stuff. He's the guy that I want navigating that next step. He's got connections all through the ACC. He's got connections all through the SEC due to his time at Alabama. He was the deputy commissioner for the ACC. I don't think a lot of people know this. He's very connected. And that's going to be important for WVU. Having Jim Clements, yep, who's at Clemson, who was the former president of WVU when you and I were in school before Gordon Gee. This stuff matters. Having Whit Babcock at Virginia Tech, this stuff matters.
If Whit Babcock was at Virginia Tech the last time, we'd have had a shot. Virginia Tech didn't want anything to do with it.
Same with Jim, I think, if he was the president at Clemson, because those guys are going to have massive voices in the next reshaping of college athletics and conferences and how this all goes down, like I said, within this next decade. Shane's a great guy to have at the helm, maybe the best guy for us to have at the helm through all of that.
You know what's going to help? That first game at Pitt, you want it to pop a huge number. And that game, the Thursday game against Virginia Tech, you want that to pop a huge number too. And I think that they will. Anyway, that's a topic for another day.
Yeah. And last one for you too here, Joshua, as it relates to your question as we close this thing down. When you say I can assume Coach Brown's hand was forced a little bit, you ready? Little Eers and Beers insider information for you. Everyone knows that it was in a way. with Graham Harrell, but I'll tell you this too. Neal Brown made some sacrifices to get Graham Harrell to Morgantown as well too, and I mean that in terms of monetary sacrifices. There was a little back and forth between Shane Lyons and Neal Brown of Neal saying, "I've got the guy that I want to hire, but I need more money," and Shane saying, "Neal, you just got a bump in your assistant pool salary. We just went 6 and 7. It's on the back of a pandemic. There is no more money." There was a little back and forth there, and Neal Brown made some financial concessions of his own, left some money on the table that he was due to convert that into salary to get Graham Harrell to Morgantown. I think that should encourage you in two ways. One, Adam, that Shane Lyons wasn't just going to be a yes man and get pushed around by a coach that still hasn't proved. Like, it'd be one thing if that was Bob Huggins and Shane Lyons, right?
Yes.
He wasn't going to let Neal Brown back him into a corner, and that's the strength you want from your athletic director.
Good point.
Two, you love that from Neal Brown, too, that he is literally willing to put his money where his mouth is for a guy that he thinks is going to come in and be able to get the offense to where it needs to be. That should encourage you. Let's see how it all plays out. You still got to win games. That's the most important thing. But I think this all gets back to I am not questioning Shane Lyons' status as athletic director of West Virginia University at all. In fact, I hope he's here for at least the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years because I want him at the helm for all this unknown that is going on through college sports right now, and particularly at the football level.
Well said, Nico Marchio.
I'm still going your starting quarterback, September 1st, backyard
Nico.
brawl, Thursday night at Heinz Field against those stinking Pitt Panthers. Will Goose Cratter.
You know what? I feel 100% confident that it's not Garrett Green.
I'm
Bang.
with you on that. How about that?
Bang.
We're on the same page there.
Not Garrett Green.
He's Adam Crowley. I'm Wesley Euler. This has been episode 49 of the Eers and Beers podcast. 2 more basketball games this week. Oklahoma on the road midweek, and then you get TCU, Jamie Dixon, at the Coliseum to close it down. Let's at least go out on a happy note winning some games. I'll have the Oklahoma reaction for you live from a hotel room in Indianapolis as I am leaving for the Combine. And then Crowley and I will have another weekend podcast for you next weekend as well. I think that about covers it, Crow, man. That's all right.
Suck my Dixon. Suck my Dixon. Let's go Mountaineers.
Let's go drink some beers.